I think that a lot of people here again, like we talked about last week, don't understand the significance of sleep and what it does to the body and what all happens when you do sleep. I mean, the brain literally, there are cells in the brain that actually get rid of toxic material in the brain that has built up, and they work at night.
Hey friends, welcome to JourneyWise podcast. I'm Shane Stanford, along here with my friends Dr. Ronnie Kent and Dr. James Kent. And today we're going to be doing part 2 of our series on sleep. Last week, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, we talked a lot about the importance of sleep, how it affects not only our physical life, but also can affect mental, emotional life, our relational life, and our home especially, and looked at the sociological issues related to sleep in terms of a society that believes that the more you sleep, the less productive you are. And it was really a great conversation. And I do encourage you to go back and watch it if you didn't, because today we're going to be talking about how do we address issues of not sleeping well. And I will turn this over to my esteemed colleagues who are much more informed about this. First question I have for you is 25 years ago in our world, I don't remember anything but a pot of coffee that might be kept throughout the day. Now it is sociological in terms of how we view coffee. It's not just about drinking coffee. It's about, going and sitting at 5 p.m. with someone and having a big old tall cup of coffee. Coffee's kind of now woven into the fabric of how we do life a lot of ways, how we do relationships. That has to affect sleep in some ways. So how do you address when one of the things that's now in the fabric of how we do life in a lot of ways, or how it's expected we can do relationships, causes us to sleep less and to sleep less well? How do you address something like that?
Well, I've got a quick story about that. This past Sunday at church, my Sunday school class, we talked about that passage in Genesis when Abraham sends his servant to find a wife for Isaac. If you recall the story, the servant cries out to the Lord and says, "Lord, help me with this." And he comes up with this idea of whichever woman offers to give me a drink at the well and also to let my camels drink. And we talked about that and the fact that Rebecca in that story, she likely had to go get water from the well 10 or 11, 12 times to feed all of his camels and him. So I think one thing to say that, now that was a really long time ago.
Somewhere around 2,700 years, that's all right.
It was a little time ago, but it's only over, I would say, probably the past 100, 150 years or so that we have become much less productive in terms of how labor intensive life is. When you think of things like water, even preparing meals, I don't know that it's fair. We can't say it's apples to apples when we look at how productive and in shape probably people were compared to us. I think is a really big thing to consider. We live longer than they did. However, we deal with a lot more issues and illnesses, things like cancer, heart disease, things that are consequences of living longer, but also we don't move around as much. So I would say that's one consideration.
I think to your point about just socialization, you just have to find a better way to socialize. I mean, like you say, if you're gonna, or in Mississippi, it cannot be coffee. It can be a big tall glass of sweet tea. So I think we have to look at the implications of what consequences are you going to live with to gain the benefits that you want. And so I think that education's a big part of it. I think that a lot of people here again, like we talked about last week, don't understand the significance of sleep and what it does to the body and what all happens when you do sleep. I mean, the brain literally, there are cells in the brain that actually get rid of toxic material in the brain that has built up, and they work at night. Like the lymphatic system does in the rest of the body, these cells do it in the brain. And so you literally can build up toxins in the brain that can make it more irritable. And an irritable brain obviously can make you irritable, act irritable, but it also can just not function in your ability to process, your memory. You convert things into your long-term memory at night. Neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change, works at night. I think educating people into the consequences of their behaviors during the day is the first step in trying to help them realize how significant sleep problems are.
You know, Ronnie, why is this the first time I'm hearing about this glylimbic process at night? That's all I needed to know, is that this is toxic removal. I don't have to talk about it as sleep. I got to go do some toxicity removal out of my brain. And that seems important for sleep.
You do have to consider the toxins you're putting into your brain during the day and what they have to take out. So some people may need a lot more sleep than others.
I can understand that rationale. Well, let's move on and talk about, so people, let's just assume that they're bought into sleep's important. We've got to be careful of what we put in our bodies. How then do we address sleep?
So I'm going to throw you off a little bit because I'm going to start in the morning. Your brain's circadian rhythm, like James was talking about, it's a 24-hour how your body moves in and out of sleep. And he was saying every 90 minutes. Some people say 120 minutes. But anyway, you have these cycles that happen during the day. And those cycles start to be put in place in the morning. And one of the things that research now shows there are very light sensitive areas in the brain that if you can be exposed to natural sunlight, and most people say not through windows or glasses in your home. So basically, if you can walk outside first thing in the morning, because early morning sunlight before the sun is actually visible is actually better at this. If you can do that for 5 to 10 minutes every morning, then you start your circadian rhythm so that you're able to fall asleep better at night. So early morning light exposure is one of the first things you can do that really can help you fall asleep better at night.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you. That's a great place to start. Is it the sunlight or is it the exercise and movement and just being in nature? Do they know?
Absolutely sunlight.
Okay.
Absolutely sunlight. Now, does exercise help? Yes, that's another thing you can do to help your sleep.
Okay.
And now you can't exercise right before bed. I mean, you have to learn that, but probably several hours before bed, you do not need to exercise.
Are you saying, 2 hours before bed, or like the people that go after work 5 o'clock?
2 to 4 hours before bed. So you could go after work. Yes. Here again, know yourself. You have to learn what works for you and what doesn't. But so exercise at some time during the day. And let's remember, and I hear everybody saying, well, I just don't have time to run 5 miles and all that sort of stuff. That's not it. Here again, American Heart Association says if you can walk vigorously 30 minutes a day, that's exercise. It's not what we call sashaying, but if you can get out there and get a pretty good rhythm going and get your heart rate up a little bit, 30 minutes a day is all you have to do. You could do that at lunch during part of your lunch break. You can do that if you will get into the routine and habit of doing it. It will absolutely help you sleep better.
You asked specifically if it was the sun. Our eyeballs were created by our Creator so that we have photoreceptors split into cones and rods. There are certain receptors within our eye specifically designed to respond to sunlight. And I just think that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing in that our God is so amazing, and yet it doesn't surprise me that science would sort of point to him in that way. But I just wanted to add that. I just think it's really cool.
And an extra cool part about that is that you have more of those on the bottom half of your retina than you do the top half of your retina. So they are made specifically for sunlight.
We have gone up a level, guys. We have gone up a notch in this podcast. I just want to say this is fantastic. So let's move on. Let's go another notch up. So what else to help us sleep?
Well, now you have to avoid bright light for about 90 minutes before you go to bed. In fact, believe it or not, candlelight is the best thing for you to be exposed to at night, but you definitely need to not have bright lights about 90 minutes before you go to bed.
So being in a room that's full of your fluorescent light, that's not a good thing.
No, and fluorescent lights tend to flicker. Is to record them on iPhone or on your phone.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Play it back, and you will see the flicker. Your eyes can't pick that up, but your brain can. And some people are more sensitive to that flicker than others, and it stimulates the wrong things in your brain. And so instead of it actually helping your sleep like it does in the morning, then it actually causes you to struggle to fall asleep.
So you're talking about either turning the voltage way down on your light bulbs or having candle, but 90 minutes before you go to bed, really reducing the amount of light in the room.
That's right. Or you can have downward like lamps, light that is forced downward, in a room.
Some of that too, I think a lot of listeners are probably familiar with melatonin, but that's a naturally occurring substance in your body. The light is a big deal because the absence of, again, it goes back to those photoreceptors in the eyes, but the absence of sunlight starts a biochemically related process for sleep. And some of that, for example, is just a natural melatonin release.
Now, let me ask about, because I know a lot of people that get in bed and they'll read the news on their iPads. I do that. Is that something where you turn down the brightness? Would that actually help to turn down the brightness on the iPad to help prepare your brain?
You're going to have to forgive me because I'm not absolutely sure I'm going to say that it's right. So people can research this on their own. But I think the only thing that's been shown maybe not to do that is a Kindle. Because of the way it's designed, black on white. I don't have one. But anyway, now if and the glasses that help with the blue don't really help as much as they're supposed to. But if it helps somebody, I'm not saying don't use it, but it may not be the answer to their problems. Paper is just the better thing. And of course, then it needs to be a lower light. So you are kind of actually forced to talk to people before you go to bed. Might be the best thing you could do before you go to bed, to have a little family time.
You would be surprised at how well it works when people would come in and see me, and we'd be working on sleep, something called sleep hygiene. Dad's probably going to talk about that in a minute. But I would get them, we would be very specific, and I would say, all right, I want you to get an actual book. A lot of times we would say, say it's a college student, get a textbook, something that's not real interesting. But I think for the normal person, it could be a novel or just something, the newspaper, something. And I would say, prop yourself up, go ahead and lay down, put your head down on a pillow, lay on your side, and then figure out a way you can kind of prop something up to read that's paper and not a screen. And they'd come back and be like, well, this solved the issue. Just because the reading is actually very important because it engages your sensory enough that your mind can't wander while reading per se. It could, but if you're pretty intentional, it gives your brain something to focus on, which is important for a lot of people. But the no screen is, again, like that's not totally sure how it all works, but my experience, again, maybe anecdotal, but it really makes a difference whether or not it's paper or an actual screen.
So what about those like me who I can't read words on a page very well anymore? And so I usually go to the screen to make it larger. So I've turned to audiobooks at night. I'll put them on the headphones on or whatever and listen to it. Does that okay or what?
I would say in some ways that might even be better because you can make the room dark. The worst thing to me about falling asleep listening to something is I usually have to have an earbud in, and I wake up and I always lose my earbuds. So
yeah, me too. Yes, that's a problem.
I think that's actually a very good solution.
In fact, that gets us to another thing, the noise, that people have. I was amazed. I was talking to my wife about this podcast and just talking to her, I said, I'm talking about white noise all the time, talking to my patients. And she said, oh, there's lots of colors of noises. She sleeps with a sound machine, therefore I do too. But she says, my sound machine is brown noise. I said, okay. And she said, and there's blue noise and pink noise and violet noise. I literally went through all of the noises, and a lot of it has to do with the frequency like brown noise is lower frequency than, it sounds like rain, a little bit more than white noise does. If you have a constant noise in your ears, then your brain is not able to, what happens to your reticular activating center turns on and off at night, because a dog barking at night doesn't wake you up, whereas that same dog barking during the day would cause you to be alarmed. He may be trying to bite you, or so you hear them with your ears, but your brain doesn't register them unless you've done something to keep that part of your brain more active. And chemicals can do that, caffeine and certain chemicals. Anxiety can do that. Things that keep that part of your brain that actually is supposed to quieten down. And, that's the first stage of sleep is parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the part of the nervous system that, the first three stages, which are non-REM sleep, turn on your parasympathetic, which is your relaxing part of your nervous system. And then the REM sleep, which is the last stage, is actually fires your sympathetic system up. So it's kind of getting you ready to wake up. But that's when you generally come out of a deep sleep at night, and that's when you decide whether you need to go to the bathroom or not, or, that sort of thing. And then you fall back into the non-REM sleep. So there's that rhythm at night that you do. So you want to enhance that any way you can. And so sometimes people really can do that with noise at night, because if you have a little problems with still being alert to those kinds of noises, then you want to not necessarily drown them out, but kind of confuse your brain as to what is a significant noise or not.
Well, and one thing that I think most people could relate to is it would be the same if you've traveled at all. If you took me and I put me in a hotel room on Times Square, I would have a very difficult time going to sleep because of all of the road noise. Now, if you put me in the middle of the woods near a bunch of bullfrogs and coyotes off in the distance and crickets, I would fall asleep like an angel. So, I can think of my wife moving to the country and her being like, what is all of, what are these creatures that I'm hearing? And are they going to come in my bedroom? Versus she grew up more in the city, and those city noises don't really, matter to her. So it's just what we're used to, really.
So what else helps us with our sleep?
All right. We get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, naps. Almost every study that's been published says that naps are great for you. Most people say a nap of around 30 minutes a day is what you should take. Okay. No nap should be over 90 minutes a day. I can't imagine sleeping that long during the day. But when I was in practice, literally, I trained myself for a 12-minute nap every day. I mean, because as both of you know, I had a recliner in my office and I'm not embarrassed to say I still do have one of those little masks that go on your face. I have one of the collars that goes around my neck, and if I take it on my back porch and it's cool enough, I have my little heating pad.
Do you set your alarm?
I set my alarm I used to set it for 12 minutes, and I play spa music on the speaker, and it's just wonderful. Naps, I think, for me, it's like you shoot me up with adrenaline. I don't know if it's removing the toxic waste. I don't know what it's doing, but if you can find, it's like James was saying, your rhythm, your time that's going to happen. And for me, that's about 1 o'clock. That's why I never like to do podcasting or anything like that at that time of the day, because that's when I'm going to have what I call a sinking spell. And so naps can be very beneficial so that you don't have to artificially keep yourself going. By that, I mean caffeine. So I have to give myself caffeine to keep myself going through the afternoon. So what does that do for my nighttime sleep, which may cause it to be not as restful? There are other things that people do. The use of alcohol will actually help people fall asleep, but the sleep you get is not as restful when alcohol's around. Same thing is true for any cannabis type things. Studies are very inconclusive when it comes to any sleep aid, any sleeping medicine or natural supplement as to the quality of sleep. It may cause you to sleep more, but you have to be careful that the quality of your sleep may not be as good. And the way to tell that is, how do I wake up every morning? You know, do I wake up feeling rested? Now, we haven't spoken about, and this would be terrible if I had forgotten to do this. You know, sleep apnea is a pretty common thing in America today because it is associated with weight problems, and we know that that's a significant health issue. So you have to be careful that you're not having sleep apnea, and if you do, you need to see your healthcare provider or sleep specialist to see if there's something that needs to be done about that. Now we have devices that can help you record your sleep. You know, there are headbands, your watch can help you get an idea of how you sleep. So there are some medical conditions. If you're having trouble sleeping, you need to see a primary care provider and talk to them about that. And you just need to do research as to what you can do about that.
So now, when you would do your schedule when you were in practice, would you do this at, say, for your hour lunch? Would you take the last half and do your nap? I mean, because there are going to be people who ask, who say, well, I only get an hour during the day. How do I arrange that? How do I do that? If this is so important, you know, how do I make this happen?
I know that this probably is not going to be true for everybody, but I would give up my lunch if I could only have time for either lunch or my nap.
Okay.
I would give up my lunch because not eating actually makes you more alert. I mean, for a period of time, when you eat, then your blood flow to your gut increases because it has to take care of the food you've just eaten. And so that kind of steals away some of the blood to your brain. That's why you tend to get drowsy after you eat. But in particular, in the afternoon, you may tend to get drowsy because you didn't sleep well the night before. And so you really can get into a vicious cycle with sleep that can become very frustrating. And so sometimes it's hard to say whether your mental health, your anxiety, your depression, your whatever that is causing your sleep problems or is caused by your sleep problems.
We're at the end of our time together. Is there anything else you want to mention?
I mentioned the phrase sleep hygiene, and really what we're referring to, and I would encourage any of you listening, if you struggle with sleep at all, just search for that, sleep hygiene. And there are many, many different websites, documents out there that will speak to this. You know, National Institute of Mental Health has good things on this on their website. But when we talk about sleep hygiene, we're talking about the way the room is set up. Again, lighting, noise, things like when you might take a shower or bath, morning versus night. If you struggle to fall asleep, for example, maybe you might try switching to taking a bath, maybe 30 minutes before you're going to get into bed and go straight into the bed. So these are just things to know, things to know in terms of a checklist for sleep if you struggle with it. A lot of people find that naturally, but just know that if you struggle for a routine or you're wondering what all is a part of my routine for sleep, go look that up and there's good information.
Great, James. Thank you. I know a lot of people will say, if I can have a good hot bath before I go to sleep, boy, that really makes the difference, or other things they may do. So that's very helpful. Ronnie, any last word? Routine is important.
So try to get as good a routine as you can. I mean, it's impossible to do that all the time. And, you know, almost everybody wakes up at least once during the night. And as you get older, and most people do have to go to the restroom, but especially as we get older, we have to. But so that's a natural thing. So, in going back to one of our recent podcasts, meditation really, non-sleep deep rest is another term. In other words, you're not asleep, but you're putting your brain into a real restful state, and it has been shown to be almost as beneficial as sleep itself. And so I think meditating on scripture during that time, and so scriptures that you've memorized, God grants sleep to those who he loves. Isn't that a cool thought? And just letting that, and we have what we call the anxiety algorithm that we can allow people to go through and do the things that cause your brain to get in a state that here again is not sleep, but is restorative. And so don't don't lay there and try to think about going to sleep, because it's just like thinking about not eating.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
No.
So if you have to, you can't fall asleep, get up out of the bed if you have to, and do something very quiet. Don't turn on bright lights, do something. But I would really suggest that you learn how to meditate and do this non-sleep deep rest, primarily meditating on scripture, on God, and count your blessings that he's done in your life. You know, all those things. Don't think so much about tomorrow. Think about the past and what God has done for you. And I think it can really usher you into a state that's, if not put you to sleep, will cause you to definitely be rested.
Well, that's a good word and a good place to end it. Guys, thank you. What a great conversation. And we want to encourage folks, if you'd like to know more about our organization, about JourneyWise, go to JourneyWise.network. We are very excited about ways that we can help your daily walk be more restful and be more in him, so that he can use you as a witness in the world. So we thank you on behalf of James Kent and Ronnie Kent. I'm Shane Stanford. God bless you. Have a great day. Hey guys, it's Shane. We're so excited that you're on this journey, and we want to thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear, it would mean a lot if you'd subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. And of course, stay tuned to all that God's doing and working to make all of us JourneyWise.